with some fantastic presentations, followed by a vote for our board members, and topped off with a raffle of a limited edition t-shirt. Everyone who's registered for this event tonight has been entered into the raffle, and you do not need to be on the webinar to win. We'll be contacting you later in a few days. So get comfortable, pour yourself a glass of your favorite drink, and settle in. It is a social after all, and we're going to do our best to keep it at just under an hour. So to get us started, we do have a pre-recorded presentation from our Friends President, Nick Lefko. Unfortunately, Nick couldn't be with us this evening because he just recently became a father to twins, but he hopes that you enjoy his message.
Good evening. My name is Nick Lefko, the president of the Friends of the Florida Panther Refuge. Thank you so much for joining us for our annual meeting this year. We're here to tell you all of the exciting things that we accomplished in 2020. Although it was a strange year, we have a lot more to show for it than we would have expected at the very beginning of all of this. I'm very excited to walk you through everything that we experienced in this last year and excited to share with you what's to come in the coming year.
Let's dive right in, shall we? Welcome to the Friends Annual Update. The Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge was established under the Endangered Species Act to protect the Florida panther and its habitat, other wildlife, and at-risk plants. The Friends of the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge, the Friends as we call ourselves, safeguard that refuge through education, outreach, and advocacy, and being an active partner in refuge projects. The Friends are also focused on protecting the native flora and fauna found in the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. Our projects center on restoring the Florida panther and its habitat within its historic range. Though this year has brought challenges, we've been able to educate and engage so many people in our community. Here's a past look at this year's outreach events that we were able to participate in. Though the pandemic did limit our ability to engage with our community, we were able to attend and host events before the pandemic struck, as well as safely engage in a few opportunities since then. We also have a new outreach partner I'm very happy to introduce you to. This is Snakey, our corn snake, who now lives at the Refuge Visitor Center, along with our Eastern Indigo snake, Corey. A facelift to our website and more activity on our Instagram, thanks to Outreach Ranger Adrian Martin, has increased our online presence and community engagement. Please take a moment to get familiar with our new webpage, where you can always keep up with what's new at the refuge, meet and engage with your board of directors, and of course, make a donation to the cause. This past year, the Friends also joined the coalition to oppose the toll roads, more than 300 miles of new and expanded highways proposed throughout rural and agricultural and wild areas extending from the Western Everglades in Collier County all the way to the Georgia border. Decades of conservation work. Legislation was put forward recently to stop the construction of several toll roads and other projects that are part of the Florida Department of Transportation's Multi-Use Corridors of Regional Economic Significance, or MCORS program. To learn more about how you can lend your voice to the fight, visit NoRoadsToRuin.org and look for the Take Action button. There they have many great opportunities for activists of all levels to participate. This year, we had a lot of special donations come in, and we wanted to call out one of our youngest activists of the year. Thank you so much to Noah Turner, who raised over $500 for the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. Great job. We also had a great fundraiser recently in collaboration with For the Love of All Things, where we raised over $900, thanks to all of you. If you're wearing one of our limited edition t-shirts, stand up, show us on the screen. We were excited to participate in this opportunity and hope to have more like it in the future. We have been able to achieve so much on the refuge this year. Let's take a peek at a few of our biggest projects and achievements. Here you can see the revitalization of the Panther Refuge Boardwalk on the Panther Refuge property, right at the intersection of I-75 and State Road 29. This display has been 2 years in the making, but it's finally here. The interpretive display includes an interactive touch screen to educate the public on panthers, their habitat, and how we can get involved. It features Florida Panther FP183, or more lovingly more lovingly called Ranger, who was collared on the Florida Panther Refuge in 2010 and was instrumental in understanding panther behavior and habitat range. A huge thank you to our partners at the Naples Zoo for working with the refuge to design and create these new interactive panels. The Friends work with other members of the Florida Panther outreach team to help people share the landscape with panthers. One important way to protect panthers is by protecting domestic animals from the panthers and other predators. To maintain support for Florida panthers, it is important that rural residents protect and secure their pets and small livestock, including goats, sheep, chickens, and rabbits in sturdy enclosures at night. The Friends help display the enclosures and provide information about how people can protect pets and small livestock at festivals and other venues, such as Save the Florida Panther Day and our very own open house here at the refuge. They've also assisted homeowners to construct livestock enclosures in rural residential neighborhoods. This one I'm very excited about. This year, we began the process of obtaining recognition as an international dark sky zone. Once designated, the refuges would become the second and third dark sky sites in South Florida, and the third and fourth dark sky sites in the entire state. In the coming year, we will be working closely with the refuge to create dark sky activities and curriculum that can be enjoyed by night sky enthusiasts of every age. Our pollinator garden has flourished over the last year as well, and refuge staff report it is a hotspot for some of our favorite pollinators, including red and black mason wasps, honeybees, Gulf fritillary butterflies, ruddy daggerweed butterflies, white peacock butterflies, and monarchs. Shout out to Eric Jadaszewski with Everglades Native Designs, who is currently working with the refuge to design a beautiful interpretive pollinator garden that will expand our current garden to 1 acre. If you're interested in getting involved with this project, we're having a garden volunteer day on April 16th. You can contact Beth at contact@floridapanther.org to sign up. Here we have an exciting day out on the refuge. This barn owl was found unable to fly by our refuge biologist Mitch Berezowski and outreach ranger Adrian Martin. They safely transported it back to a waiting Friends board member, Mary Helen Ruder, and she took it to the Conservancy for rehab. We are happy to report that the owl made a full recovery and was later released back onto the refuge. Great teamwork, everybody. The refuge now has 4 red-cockaded woodpecker clusters. 2 more were added in late 2020, and new birds were translocated to the area from North Florida. We are excited to see if they breed this spring. In the 10,000 Islands National Wildlife Refuge, our sea turtle surveys continued. This year, there were 100 nests with 81 successfully hatching. Of course, our favorite flowers of the refuge, the ghost orchid research continues. We continued their monitoring of the ghost orchids with the help of some student researchers this year, focusing on the nectar collection as we seek to learn more from this mysterious epiphyte. Trail camera monitoring never gets old. The refuge has one of the longest standing trail camera projects in the US and has been operating since 2012. Due to this and the comprehensive grid set up during the deer study conducted several years ago, the refuge was one of the first partners contacted to assist the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission in researching the unknown disorder currently affecting Florida panthers and bobcats. The refuge has set up most of their cameras to take video images to assist with monitoring the condition of the wildcats, and has been a site used by FWC to collar bobcats. We hope to find a cause and a solution to this disorder soon. One of the very exciting things coming in the next few years, the refuge is getting a new visitor center. This new building will replace the existing refuge headquarters and will feature interactive habitats, ranger-led programs, and a classroom for presentation. Donate today to help us create a beautiful educational experience that's fun for the whole family. Here's a quick rundown of some of our 2020 financials, thanks to our treasurer, Mac Hatcher. We took in over $20,000 in revenue and spent a little over $22,000 over the course of our 2020 fiscal year. The current reserves leaves us with $72,237 going into 2021. Come, get involved. We'd love to have you join us in our mission to protect the Florida panther. First off, I'd like to welcome our newest board member, Jen Firestein. We are so excited to have her aboard. Jen is awesome. Be like Jen. Come join the board of directors. Here are a few of the open positions we have available on the board right now for anyone looking for ways to get involved. Maybe a board position is more than you could sign up for, but joining one of our board committees gives you the ability to participate in our mission with a small group to share the load. Of course, we are so grateful to Adrian Martin for signing up for another year as the Florida Panther Refuge Outreach Ranger. We are delighted to have her dedication and positive attitude to advancing our mission. That wraps up our Refuge update for 2020. I hope you have found some way to get involved and participate in our efforts to protect the Florida Panther.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this annual meeting. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all about everything that we've accomplished in this last year and everything that's coming for 2021. Don't forget to take some time to stop by our new website, find some new ways to engage with the Friends of the Florida Panther Refuge in the coming year.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Nick. In his place this evening, I would like to thank and welcome our Vice President, John Courtright, to answer any questions anybody might have. Mary Helen, do we have any questions in the chat?
I do not see any questions in the chat just yet. In case anyone is typing a question right now, I actually have one. John, I was wondering where the new Red-Cockaded Woodpecker clusters are on the refuge, if you know anything about those.
Really, all I know about those are that they were relocated from the Withlacoochee Forest. And I think we probably have Mark Danaher on board here. And if anybody knows anything about RCWs, it would be he. And he might be able to tell you a little bit more about where they are located and what the status of them are like. Mark, are you around?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I currently have my video turned off in preparation for my upcoming presentation, but right now on the Florida Panther Refuge, we have 2 confirmed active red-cockaded woodpecker clusters, one of which has produced fledglings for the past 2 breeding seasons. The other is a single male red-cockaded woodpecker cluster who is trying as best as he can to attract a mate, but he has unfortunately not been able to attract a mate yet. And back in December, FWC translocated a new pair of red-cockaded woodpeckers onto the refuge, and we have not been able to find out if those birds have stuck yet or not.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the update, Mark. The only other thing I would like to say, and for everybody to hear, is we want to thank Mary Helen and Adrian so much for all their hard work putting this together tonight. So a round of applause in the chat for them, please. And unless you have other questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat. I just wanted to say that I hope Valentine's Day maybe sparks some love between our RCWs. So.
All right, here's for hoping. All righty, well, thank you, John and Mark, for also chiming in on that one. We now have a special message from our donor, Noah Turner. So I will go ahead and bring us back over to that. All righty.
Hello, my name is Noah, and I am 13 years old. One of my favorite animals is the Florida Panther. I fell in love with them when I was 6 years old, and I saw one at a wildlife sanctuary. I could not believe that Florida had such an amazing animal. I learned that they are endangered species. I would hate that other boys and girls would never get to see such a beautiful animal. I will continue to bring awareness to the amazing creature, and hopefully one day they will no longer be on the endangered list. Bye.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Noah, for that wonderful message. And I see that you're here with us today, so thank you so much, Noah. I know that the Friends are very grateful and appreciative, and we all share your help that the Panthers get off the endangered species list. And a huge shout out because we know that you raised over $500 with a lemonade stand at school. So that's huge. And we're all very, very proud and very grateful for all that you've done. So yay, Noah. All righty. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mark Danaher for his presentation, which is Fire, the Good, Bad, and Beautiful. Mark Danaher is the supervisory wildlife biologist at the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Adrian?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see that now, Adrian?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. So good evening. My name is Mark Danaher. As Adrian mentioned, I'm the supervisory wildlife biologist on the Southwest Florida Gulf Coast Refuges, which currently consist of the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge and the 10,000 Islands National Wildlife Refuge. For those of you who aren't aware, I always like to recognize just the significant amount of conservation lands that we have in South Florida. The Florida Panther and the 10,000 Islands National Wildlife Refuge are part of one of the largest contiguous conservation landscapes east of the Rocky Mountains. Collectively, there's over 4 million contiguous acres of protected conservation lands in South Florida, twice the size of Yellowstone National Park. Before I really delve into the presentation about fire, it's important for everybody to understand the ecosystem drivers that drive our ecosystems in South Florida. Drivers are the dominant ecological processes that help shape our ecosystems, and they can consist of geology, weather, nutrients, salinity, hydrology, and fire. And of these, none of are more important than fire and hydrology. Fire and hydrology are the critical cogs that help turn the ecosystem wheels. When thinking about fire, it's important to understand that there's a difference between good fire and bad fire. As science has shown, fire helps maintain conditions within our ecosystems that support life. Certainly, fire can impact individual species of flora and fauna, but also creates the opportunity for new life and opportunities and resiliency. Fire also helps maintain a mosaic of habitat conditions across the landscape and thus preserves biodiversity. So a real good analogy is that just like having a diversified investment portfolio that offers stability in the face of economic market fluctuations, diversity in nature is often the key to maintaining and enhancing our ecosystems. bad fire occurs when the natural processes within our ecosystems have been so drastically altered. This is a slide of the Lee Williams Road fire and a picture that I took on March 6, 2017 at the intersection of Highway 41 and Collier Boulevard. This is bad fire, and this is bad fire that's resulted from altered fire regimes and altered ecological processes within our ecosystems, such as hydrology. A recently burned forest might look like it doesn't support much life. And so fire might not seem like the best way to manage a forest. And as a result, some people might think that keeping fire out of a system is the best way to protect a forest. And unfortunately, this philosophy really got going hard in the US in the early to mid 1900s, and unfortunately still persist in some areas of the country today. You have to really look back in history to understand how we got to where we are today in terms of our ecosystems. In the early to mid 1900s, a lot of our forests in the Southeast had been cut over. There were wildfires ravaging the landscape, and there weren't really many federal agencies or state agencies that had been created to conserve lands and properly manage lands and fight wildfires. So the U.S. Forest Service was formed in 1905, and a couple of decades later, we saw one of the first big negative fire propaganda machines get started in the United States. And that was a project called the Southern Forestry Education Project that was sponsored by the American Forest Association. And these foresters, who later became known as the Dixie Crusaders, traveled around all throughout the Southeast in special trucks with generators and motion picture projectors at the time. Imagine that in 1927, and traveled throughout the Southeast in Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, spreading the gospel that fire was bad and that we had to prevent wildfires. And that philosophy of fire exclusion and that fire was bad, manifested itself in North America throughout the early to mid 1900s, and even as recent as the 1980s. I'm sure other people in my generation can relate to a very, how should I say, popular bear who would always promote a message that fire was bad. But luckily, we had some visionary conservationists such as Alda Leopold, who understood the role that fire played in our ecosystems and was actually one of the first to promote fire as a management tool and really started the conservation ethic in the role in using fire as a management tool. Today, we have a much better understanding of the role that fire plays, and the take-home message for everybody on this call that you need to understand is that while good fire might create some ugly conditions for a very short time period, but it doesn't take long for the beauty to emerge in those recently burned areas. And this is one of my favorite examples from a plant standpoint. This is one of our native terrestrial orchids, Calopogon tuberosus, also known as the tuberous grass pink. And this is a species of plant that you rarely ever see flower until right after a burn occurs. This is another one of my favorite, the Simpson Zephyr lily. And these are photos that I took 22 days after we had conducted a prescribed burn on the refuge. And there's nothing just more exciting to see a beautiful wildfire like this sprout up after a recent prescribed burn on the refuge. Unfortunately, bad fires can not only destroy lives and devastate ecosystems, but in some areas of the country, they can actually sterilize the soil so that nothing will ever grow back. Doesn't really happen that much in the southeast, but it happens a lot out west. And this is what's happening in some of those major catastrophic wildfires that we're seeing today in states like California, South Dakota, Montana. And this is a picture that I took 12 years after a wildfire known as the Jasper Wildfire Hell Canyon in Hell Canyon, South Dakota occurred. And as you can see, that wildfire just eliminated all forest overstory and actually sterilized an entire mountainsides. Luckily, science has shown that the role that fire plays, and we've been able to incorporate fire more and more throughout the Southeast. And unfortunately, we're still playing catch up. And this is a really interesting graph if you read the caption at the bottom, and it came from a research paper that was published from Avon Park Air Force Range just to the north of us in 2014. And they looked at fire scars within pines and cypress on Avon Park to look at the history and the frequency of fires at Avon Park, dating back as far back as 1784. And if you pay attention, those green bars that's the transition fire. So those are the fires that would normally occur naturally in our South Florida ecosystems as a result of lightning caused fires and Native American ignited fires. But if you look at those blue lines, the blue bars on the bottom of the graph, and look at the trend that those are the dormant season burns, the burns that would occur in the winter months. And the trend starting, as far back as the late 1800s, early 1900s was that, the trend increased in dormant season burning as opposed to transition season burning, when nature would have naturally burned by itself with the use of lightning and Native American ignited fires. In South Florida, we have ecological communities that are absolutely dependent upon fire to maintain desirable conditions within those. And our pine flatwoods are a perfect example of this. And we have South Florida slash pine, which is still recognized as a variety of slash pine. And similar to longleaf, we don't have longleaf, believe it or not, on the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge. It's a little bit too far south. But our South Florida slash pine, I like to call it a longleaf wannabe, because similar to longleaf, our South Florida slash pine has long needles that protect the terminal bud when fire does occur within those ecosystems, as you can see in this photo that I took during a prescribed burn. Other species of our pine flatwoods, such as the saw palmetto, are adapted and absolutely dependent upon fire for their continued survival. And this picture was taken 22 days after a prescribed burn on the refuge. And you can see that this saw palmetto, although it looks pretty dead, it's not. It is loving that fire. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's already starting to flower. So prescribed burning actually has been shown to increase flowering and fruit production with saw palmettos. The refuge's namesake and state animal, the Florida panther, benefits from fire-maintained ecosystems, which provide quality habitat for their primary prey items, especially white-tailed deer. White-tailed deer and other herbivorous animals greatly benefit from the high-quality forages that are produced in fire-maintained pine woodlands. And these open pine woodlands and prairies actually provide greater visibility to the deer as well, so that they can have a greater chance to escape would-be predators and see predators such as the Florida panther. This was a picture that I captured after we conducted a prescribed burn on the refuge last year, And the deer were just absolutely loving it. I think I videoed about 12 deer in this particular burn unit, and this is a doe bedded down in that unit. Other species that benefit from our prescribed burning and fire in general include species such as the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, small mammals such as rabbits, and this is a marsh rabbit. The gopher tortoise thrives in fire maintained ecosystems, and as a result, this keystone species benefits over 350 other commensal species that utilize its burrows, including the burrowing owl, Florida mouse, Carolina gopher frog, and eastern indigo snake. And the true flagship species of the longleaf pine ecosystem, or just pine woodlands in general, is the red-cockaded woodpecker. This species requires fire-maintained pine woodlands for its survival. If you take fire out of the ecosystem, you will lose species like the red-cockaded woodpecker. So this species became endangered not only because it lost the majority of its old growth pine forest throughout the southeastern United States, but also as a result of fire exclusion and fire suppression. The federally threatened Audubon's crested caracara here in South Florida greatly benefits from open fire maintained woodlands and prairie habitat. One of my favorites here in Southwest Florida, the big cypress fox squirrel, thrives in open pine woodlands. And if you exclude fire from our pine woodlands, you often lose your big cypress fox squirrels, and instead, as those areas start transitioning to more hardwood hammock areas, you'll actually start, switching species composition and getting species like eastern gray squirrels occupying those areas. And believe it or not, even some species like bats benefit from fire maintained ecosystems. And this is the federally endangered Florida bonneted bat. And I guess it was in 2015, researchers discovered what was at the time only the second known Florida bonneted bat roost that had ever been discovered in South Florida. And these researchers discovered this natural roost on the Florida Panther Refuge in a frequently burned pine flatwood on the west side of the refuge. And that area had been maintained by fire since the refuge was established every 3 to 4 years within that unit. So the take-home message is that fire is crucial. And unfortunately, today, we can't allow natural fire to spread across the landscape like it once did before all the roads and ditches and neighborhoods started forming. So land managers such as myself use prescribed burning to mimic what natural fire would have done. And we have unique challenges even with prescribed burning. And one of the biggest challenges is we all came to South Florida for a reason. It's a beautiful place to live. But unfortunately, when you have rapidly increasing human populations, those people have to have a place to live. And as such, as more and more people start moving, the encroachment into what we call the wildland urban interface really starts occurring. And when this happens, it can have devastating consequences. So to step back to the red-cockaded woodpecker, as recently as 1993, all these little red dots you see on this map, those were historic red-cockaded woodpecker clusters that today no longer exist because of the amount of people that we have moving to Southwest Florida. With more and more people moving to Southwest Florida comes more and more cars on the roads, and as a result, the need for additional transportation improvements occur. And this is a prime example adjacent to the refuge. Right now, there's plans to 4-lane State Road 29 that you can see in this screenshot, basically 4-laning it all the way from State Road 82 north of Immokalee all the way down to Alligator Alley at the southeast corner of the refuge. So I met what, we have so many people moving into Southwest Florida. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if we're improving, our roads, our infrastructure to handle the human population? Well, from a land manager standpoint, excuse me, it all boils down to smoke management. This is one of our prescribed burns on the west side of the refuge. I guess it was about 3 years ago. And if you look, this is looking north, south on the south side of I-75. All that smoke is blowing west. Well, guess what's west of the Florida Panther Refuge? Golden Gate Estates and Naples. And so smoke management is a huge, huge complex issue of prescribed burning. And to make matters worse, fire is completely dependent upon weather. So every prescribed burn that we conduct, the fire managers, they rely exclusively on the fire weather to determine what they burn, when they burn, and how they burn it. And unfortunately, to make matters worse, we have an interesting phenomenon called nighttime inversions. Nighttime inversions form during the night as air near the ground cools faster than the air above it. And as a result, a layer of warm air gets trapped between two layers of cool air. And as a result, fog often forms. And this is an example looking west on Alligator Alley from the State Road 29 bridge. And as you can see, this is a perfect example of a nighttime inversion that had occurred. And all those woods that you see to the right of the picture and those prairies, that's the southeast corner of the Florida Panther Refuge. So as you can imagine, it is extremely difficult for land managers to use prescribed burning to maintain and manage fire-dependent ecosystems when you have to deal with huge roads like Alligator Alley and complex weather patterns like nighttime inversions. And smoke management is absolutely imperative along these major highways. This is an example of a 27-car pileup that resulted on the west side of the refuge between mile markers, I think 85 and 86. And it resulted, a 27-car pileup resulted in 3 fatalities and 13 injuries. The refuge had just conducted a prescribed burn the day before this accident occurred. So as a result, the fire managers were intensively investigated. Luckily, the accident occurred as a result of a super fog event, which was related to nighttime inversions. I would be remiss if I didn't mention hydrology and its role that it plays in our ecosystems along with fire. Historically, water would have flowed across what is now Big Cypress National Preserve and onto the refuge through the Ocallawacoochee Slough to form the headwaters of Fakahatchee Strand. Unfortunately, most of this water from Ocallawacoochee Slough never makes it to the refuge today. Instead, it is captured and diverted by State Road 29 and the adjacent Barren River Canal that flows for 39 miles from Immokalee and discharges into 10,000 Islands at Everglades City. And this is an example of the I-75 canal looking east that I took a couple years ago. These major canals, like the I-75 and Barren River Canal, have been shown to impact the water table upwards of 2 miles away. And as a result of these canals essentially dewatering the water table, they result in changing vegetative conditions. And this is a classic example of this. If you look on the left side of this image is an aerial view of an area on the Panther Refuge that we call Rock Island, taken in 1953. The image on the right is an image shortly after Alligator Alley was completed and became part of I-75 in 1994. And if you compare and contrast these two images, the image on the left shows that the majority of the refuge and Picayune Strand, for that matter, consisted of open pine woodlands. But as late as 1994, those woodlands started to become closed canopied, and one of the causes of those areas becoming closed canopied was the influx of cabbage palms. Although native, we documented upwards of 800 to 1,200 cabbage palms per acre on the west side of the refuge, adjacent to the I-75 canal in 2017. So cabbage palm is a native species. Why does it matter? Well, this image is a perfect example of why it matters. When you have those unnaturally high densities of cabbage palms, they can result in significant fire intensity and fire behavior. And this is a photo that I took of a wildfire that was started by some DOT contractors on I-75 in April 2017. The fire jumped onto the Panther Refuge on the west side of the refuge. And this is a picture I took at 9:43 p.m. And this particular area hasn't seen fire in decades. And as a result, it was becoming a pure cabbage palm forest. And if you look, that fire was a canopy fire. It was burning within the canopy. And as a result, it completely killed all of our pine overstory. Now, on the other side of the dirt road from that buffer strip, where in my previous slide, this is an example of a restored pine flatwoods on the refuge. And if you look, this is the desirable conditions that we want within our pine flatwoods. And the only way you can get this is with adequate use of fire and trying to restore the hydrology. Luckily today, the refuge is in very good shape. This is a map that shows the number of prescribed burns that have occurred on the refuge since 2000. And so the take-home message from this map is that the reds, deep blues, and greens and pinks those are all fire-dependent ecosystems that we burn on a 3 to 5 year, every 3 to 5 years. The areas in black that are on the slide are areas that we should be concerned about, because those are areas that have exceeded that 3 to 5 year fire return interval. And that 3 to 5 year fire return interval that's kind of the sweet spot, if you will, of maintaining our fire dependent ecosystems with fire. Anything outside of that 5 year period, you start having some pretty significant ecological effects from fire being excluded that long. With tens of thousands of people moving into Eastern Collier County in the next couple of decades and using our roads, we have to maintain our ability to use fire as a management tool in order to make sure that these last great landscapes, conservation landscapes in Florida, such as the Panther Refuge and Big Cypress, Picayune Strand, Fakahatchee Strand, so that they continue to be the last great examples of our natural communities in South Florida. If we lose our ability to use fire as a management tool, these ecosystems and the species that are dependent upon those ecosystems will suffer. So the time to act is now. We have to be proactive instead of reactive. And it truly takes a village, including every one of you on this call, along with land managers such as ourselves, to work together so that we can continue to use fire as an important management tool to maintain and enhance our conservation landscapes in South Florida. Solutions, we need to continue to restore the hydrology. I can't emphasize that enough. I can give it a whole another presentation on hydrologic restoration needs and the importance of hydrology in South Florida. Forest restoration in both our wetlands and uplands. And we have to maintain adequate fire return intervals within our fire dependent ecosystems. And there's some novel approaches that we can take so that we won't lose our ability to use fire. Thankfully, Florida was proactive enough in the 1990s, after there were some significant wildfires, to enact the Florida Prescribed Fire Act, which basically protects the land manager's ability to use prescribed fire. However, as more and more people move into places like Southwest Florida, many of these people aren't aware and understand the role that fire plays in maintaining our conservation lands. So one novel approach has been the use of smoke waivers, which actually get recorded in deeds. And it's been used elsewhere in the Southeast, such as South Carolina. And that's something that we can easily do so that we don't lose our ability to use prescribed fire. So in the end, restore the hydrology and don't limit fire any more than it has already. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions any of you all might have. And just an FYI, this is a picture that we got of a female Florida panther moving her den of 3 kittens onto the Florida Panther Refuge from Picayune Strand State Forest on January 7th. This is really, really exciting news because this is the first documentation, excuse me, of Florida Panther kittens this young in over 3 years. So needless to say, we were excited. Thank you very much.
Hey, Mark, this is Mary Helen. We did get a few questions in the chat. And so the first one is, where do the animals go when a prescribed burn is done in their usual habitat? That's from Terry.
So good, excellent question, Terry. And the good news is that, similar to our plants that have evolved over the millennia to be dependent upon fire to maintain those fire-dependent ecosystems, the animals have evolved to coexist and be dependent upon fire as well. So many of the highly mobile species, such as deer, panthers, bobcats, foxes, can easily outrun a prescribed fire. You have to realize we're conducting prescribed fires under the most ideal conditions possible. And so we don't want to have intense hot fires that are going to destroy the forest canopy and negatively impact wildlife. That's our goal, is to manage and protect our wildlife on a national wildlife refuge. Some of the more cryptic animals, like eastern diamondbacks, gopher tortoises, they rely on underground refugia. One of the rattlesnakes that we tracked for 2 years, I had the ability to go in and actually track her. We named her Possum during a prescribed burn, and she instinctively knew to move into a wetland in that prescribed burn unit. And so, she was completely unaffected. So they have the refugia, the underground refugia, and the instinct, to get away from fire. And luckily, we have enough wetlands. Over 2/3 of the Panther Refuge is in some type of wetland habitat. So they have refugia and escape areas they can escape to.
Awesome. Our next question is also, it's a little more related to wildlife and less about fire. But Elizabeth said in the Southern Everglades, specifically heading southeast, they've been seeing disappearance of rabbits, raccoons, and a few other species because of the invasive Burmese python. Are you seeing similar issues on the Florida Panther Refuge?
So, excellent wildlife question. On the Panther Refuge, luckily, we are still seeing lots of small mammal, mesomammal activity. Now, other places like Everglades National Park, there's entire areas on Everglades National Park where mesomammals, such as your raccoons, skunks, possums, rats, have been completely eliminated. They can't find any mesomammals that size. We aren't at that point, thank goodness, on the Florida Panther Refuge, but it's just a matter of time with the python invasion. We've discovered pythons all around the perimeter of the refuge, as far north as Oil Well Road. The real hot spot for pythons right now has been right at the intersection of I-75 and State Road 29. So as much as we dislike interstate systems, the interstate might actually be doing a benefit to limiting the pythons from making its way onto the refuge. But that being said, one of our board members actually informed us not too long ago that they encountered a visitor on the Marsh Trail who said they had seen a Burmese python on a public hiking trail on the Panther Refuge. So this is scary news. It's something that we have to remain vigilant about and keep our eye out on it. But it's scary, but it's probably going to happen one of these days. Pythons are going to show up on the refuge. They probably are already there.
So I don't see any other questions, and I think it's about time to wrap up. So I'll pass it over to you, Adrian. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation, Mark. Thank you so much. Very informative. We're very grateful to have had you join us this evening. If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to either comment on our Facebook page or send us an email at contact@floridapanther.org. And we will do our best over the next couple of days to make sure that we get those answered for you. Now we are going to go on to the board vote. So let me go ahead and share my screen one more time with y'all. Alrighty, so Mary Helen is going to be posting in the chat a Google documentation that if you guys could all just take a few moments to go ahead and fill that out. Today we do have a vote for 3 of our board members, Nick Lefko, our current president, Mary Helen Reuter, our secretary, and Jen Firestein as our general member. You can find their bios on our website again at floridapanther.org. I'll just give everybody a second or two to go do that. And now the time we've all been waiting for, the end of the night raffle. So I do have a couple of, everybody who signed up has got their name in my handy dandy tin here. We are going to be raffling off one of our limited edition t-shirts. It is this beautiful burgundy color here. Let me go ahead and stop this so that everybody can see me go ahead and do this. All righty. The only other person I have here is my cat, and she can't pull this, so it's going to have to be you guys. All righty. So congratulations to Barbara Long for winning the t-shirt today. Barbara, if you were on the call, fantastic. We will go ahead and be in contact with you in the next couple of days to get this mailed out to you. So that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you can, before you leave, we would like to get a group photo. So if you're in your Panther shirt, please go ahead and show us your wonderful limited edition Panther shirts as we get this photo for everybody. Yay, everyone. Perfect. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful evening and a happy afternoon or weekend. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.